The klaxon's wail pierced through the sterile white corridors of Horizon 7, a sound that transformed the cutting-edge deep space research station from a temple of scientific discovery into a nightmare of imminent destruction. Dr. Aria Chen's fingers flew across the holographic interface, her movements a blur of desperate calculation and scientific instinct. "Containment protocols are offline," shouted Marcus Rodriguez from across the main research hub. Sparks erupted from a bank of quantum processors, casting demonic shadows across his panic-stricken face. "Whatever we've detected, it's not just breaking our systems, it's deliberately dismantling them." Aria's eyes never left the primary display. The signal they'd intercepted defied every known principle of astrophysical communication. It wasn't radio waves, wasn't electromagnetic radiation, wasn't anything that could be classified by current scientific understanding. The pattern was alive, a fractal nightmare that seemed to breathe, to think, to adapt with each millisecond of analysis. 36 hours earlier, this had been a routine deep space monitoring mission. The Horizon 7 station, orbiting just beyond the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, was humanity's most advanced listening post. Funded by a consortium of global scientific institutions, it represented the pinnacle of human technological achievement. Massive quantum arrays, quantum entanglement communication systems, and a team of the world's most brilliant researchers worked in perfect synchronization. Until now, the first anomaly had appeared at 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time, a microscopic fluctuation in the background radiation of deep space, something so minute that most monitoring systems would have dismissed it as statistical noise. But Dr. Chen wasn't most researchers. Her breakthrough work in quantum acoustic resonance had made her reputation in scientific circles, a reputation built on detecting the undetectable. "Aria," Marcus's voice cracked. "We need to initiate emergency evacuation." She ignored him, her mind racing faster than the cascading systems around her. The signal was more than a communication. It was a probe, a test, a living mathematical equation that was systematically dismantling their technological defenses. A violent tremor rocked the station. Hull integrity warnings flashed crimson across multiple displays. Something was attacking them, but not in any conventional sense of attack. It was as if the very fabric of technological space was being unraveled, rewritten, transformed. "It's alive," Aria whispered, a revelation that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "This isn't just a signal. It's a conscious entity." The station's chief of security, Colonel Jack Hansen, burst through the reinforced doors. His tactical gear was already prepped for combat, a plasma rifle gripped tightly in his hands. "We got incoming external threats. Multiple unidentified craft are approaching. They're not matching any known configuration in our databases." Marcus began emergency data transfer protocols, his fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. "I'm creating quantum-encrypted backup modules. If we can't preserve the primary data, these might survive." Another explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered, then stabilized on emergency power. But the emergency lighting was different, tinged with a strange, almost iridescent blue that seemed to pulse in perfect synchronization with the mysterious signal. Aria realized they were running out of time. Whatever this signal was, whatever was happening, it was clear they had stumbled upon something far beyond a simple scientific discovery. This was first contact, but not in any way humanity had ever imagined. "We need to preserve the primary data module," she called out, grabbing a reinforced black cylinder from a nearby secure storage unit. It contained the raw, unprocessed data of their initial detection, the first moment they had intercepted the impossible signal. Colonel Hansen moved to her side. "We've got less than 10 minutes before complete station failure. Evacuation shuttles are prepping, but communications are compromised." A sudden calm descended over Dr. Chen. Years of scientific training, of pushing beyond known boundaries, had prepared her for this moment. This wasn't just a threat. This was an opportunity, a chance to understand something fundamental about the universe that no human had ever comprehended. "Marcus," she called, her voice steady, "finish the data transfer." Jack, prepare for emergency extraction." The impossible signal continued to pulse, to breathe, to think. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between worlds, something was watching, waiting, testing. The safe house was anything but safe. Tucked away in the labyrinthine back streets of Bucharest, it was a palimpsest of hacked security systems and improvised technological defenses. Dr. Area Chen's hands moved with surgical precision, splicing quantum encryption protocols into a network of modified cellular transmitters. "We've got less than 72 hours before they track us completely," Marcus Rodriguez muttered, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed to breathe with digital life. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed days without sleep, fueled by nothing more than synthetic caffeine and raw desperation. Beside him, Dr. Elena Kozlov, a former Russian intelligence operative turned quantum physicist, analyzed the fragments of data they'd managed to extract from the Horizon 7 station. Her eyes, steel gray and unblinking, scanned lines of code that seemed to shift and change even as she watched. "This isn't just a signal," Elena said, her Russian accent cutting through the tension. "It's a living system. Every time we try to decode it, it rewrites its own encryption." The attack had been swift and surgical. Within hours of the initial signal interception, government agencies from multiple countries had begun hunting the research team. Some wanted to suppress the discovery. Others wanted to control it. A select few seemed terrified of what the signal might represent. Marcus pulled up a holographic map, dotted with red markers indicating near misses. "We've been ambushed 3 times in the past 48 hours. These aren't standard government extraction teams. Look at the tactical patterns." Area studied the map. The attack vectors were too precise, too coordinated to be a standard international operation. Something else was hunting them. Something that operated with a level of intelligence that transcended human capabilities. A secure communication line chirped. The encryption was one of Marcus's own design, a quantum-locked communication method that would disintegrate after a single use. The message was from Dr. Kamil Novak, their xenolinguistics specialist who had gone dark immediately after the station's destruction. The message was cryptic, a series of mathematical equations, musical notation fragments, and what appeared to be genetic code snippets. But to Area, it looked like something more, a warning encoded in the most fundamental language possible. He knew they were coming for him, Elena said quietly, her fingers tracing the holographic message. "This isn't just data. It's a breadcrumb trail." Another explosion rocked the building. Marcus's custom defense systems flickered to life, a complex web of electronic countermeasures that could confuse even the most advanced tracking systems. They'd become ghosts, moving through the technological landscape like digital wraiths. "We need to understand the full context of the signal," Area said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Whatever we intercepted on Horizon 7 was more than just a communication. It was a test." Marcus pulled up the original signal data. What had appeared as a random pattern now seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. Mathematical equations that seemed to breathe, to think, to adapt with each moment of analysis. "Look at the base frequency," he said, zooming into a microscopic section of the signal. "It's not just a communication method. It's a form of consciousness." Elena's background in intelligence gave her a different perspective. Someone, or something, wants this discovery buried. The level of coordination suggests we're dealing with more than just terrestrial agencies. As if on cue, a holographic alert flashed. Their last remaining communication satellite was being systematically disabled. Whoever was hunting them was closing in, removing every possible avenue of escape or communication. "We need a plan," Area said, her mind racing through potential scenarios. "They'll expect us to run. We need to do something they won't anticipate." Marcus grinned, a wild, almost manic expression that spoke to weeks of high-stakes research and near-death experiences. "I might have an idea, but it's insane, even by our standards." The safe house's reinforced walls seemed to pulse with strange, almost living energy. The signal they'd discovered was changing them, transforming their understanding of what was possible. Outside, the night was silent, but something was watching, waiting, hunting. And humanity's most unlikely defenders were about to make their move. Prague's ancient streets wound like arteries through the city's historical heart, offering a labyrinth of escape routes that Dr. Kamil Novak knew better than anyone. His fingers, calloused from years of deciphering long-forgotten languages, traced the encrypted message one last time. The xenolinguistics specialist understood something his colleagues had not yet realized. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was a war that had been brewing for millennia. The safe house was a modest apartment tucked away in the Malastrana district, its walls lined with linguistic manuscripts, quantum communication theory diagrams, and holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living information. Kamil knew he was running out of time. His latest decryption had revealed a terrifying truth. The signal they'd intercepted was a fragment of a cosmic conflict so vast, so incomprehensible, that human understanding seemed laughably limited. Civilizations reduced to mathematical equations, consciousness weaponized. Entire star systems erased with computational precision. A soft vibration interrupted his thoughts. The quantum-encrypted communication device, a prototype developed by Marcus Rodriguez, was transmitting a warning. Someone was coming. Candle began the destruction protocol. Years of research, decades of linguistic and mathematical work, would be reduced to quantum-encrypted dust in moments. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, uploading critical data to multiple quantum-locked repositories scattered across the globe. The first explosion rocked the building before the breach team even entered. Kamil smiled. They were getting predictable. His smile faded as he realized the true nature of the attack. These weren't standard government operatives. The tactical approach, the quantum disruption fields, the precise elimination of electronic systems, this was something else entirely. Outside, Prague transformed. Streetlights flickered with an impossible blue-green frequency. Electromagnetic disturbances created phantom shadows that moved against the natural laws of physics. Something was watching. Something was hunting. Kamil's final act was to activate the quantum transmission, the burst of information so complex, so densely packed with meaning, that it would take years, perhaps decades, to fully decode. A warning, a map, a challenge. The breach team moved with inhuman precision. Quantum-locked tactical suits, communication systems that seemed to predict movement before it happened. They weren't human. Not entirely. As the first tactical operative breached the safe house's primary defense grid, Kamil completed his transmission. The quantum burst carried more than just information. It carried hope. To Area, Marcus Elena, his final encrypted message read, "The signal is a test. Humanity is the variable they never calculated." The explosion was spectacular, but the real destruction happened in the quantum realm. A burst of information that would ripple across global communication networks, scientific institutions, and something far more profound. Thousands of miles away, in a nondescript monitoring station buried deep beneath the Andes Mountains, a team of researchers watched in stunned silence. The quantum transmission had triggered something unexpected, a cascading effect that began to rewrite the very understanding of communication, of consciousness, of existence. Dr. Elena Kozlov was the first to understand. "It's not just a message," she whispered to Marcus Rodriguez. "It's a weapon. It's an invitation." The transmission carried fragments of a cosmic conflict that defied human comprehension. Mathematical equations that were also living languages. Communication methods that could destroy or create entire civilizations with a computational thought. The signal was alive, and it was choosing humanity as its new variable. In Prague, where Kamil Novak's safe house had been reduced to quantum-scattered particles, something remained. A microscopic quantum entanglement, a single thread of information that would prove impossible to destroy. The cosmic war had found its newest battlefield, and humanity had just been drafted. The signal continued to pulse, to think, to wait. Somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, Something was watching, calculating, preparing. The quantum transmission device hummed with a life of its own, a testament to human ingenuity pushed beyond all known scientific boundaries. Dr. Aria Chen stood at the epicenter of what would become humanity's most audacious scientific gambit, her fingers hovering over an interface that seemed to breathe with potential energy. "Final system check," Marcus Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with a mixture of excitement and terror. The underground facility, a converted Cold War-era bunker beneath the Atacama Desert, was a fortress of technological innovation. Banks of quantum processors lined the walls, each one a marvel of engineering that represented years of clandestine research. Alina Kozlov monitored the global communication networks, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed increasing instability worldwide. Stock markets fluctuated wildly. Satellite communications transformed into a chaotic symphony of random signals. For the first time in human history, technology seemed to breathe with an alien rhythm. "Transmission sequence initiated," Aria announced, her voice cutting through the electric tension. The device they had constructed was more than a communication tool. It was a weapon of information, designed to pierce through dimensional barriers that humanity had only theoretically understood. Constructed from fragments of the original signal, enhanced by Marcus's quantum computing breakthroughs, and calibrated using Elena's deep understanding of communication systems, it represented the pinnacle of human scientific achievement. 17 minutes. That's how long the transmission would last. 17 minutes that would change everything. The first wave of the transmission hit global communication systems like a quantum tsunami. Cell phones around the world erupted in a symphony of impossible frequencies. Computer networks began to display patterns that defied mathematical logic, living equations that seemed to breathe, to think, to adapt. Military communication systems went dark. Financial networks collapsed and reformed in impossible configurations. For 17 perfect minutes, human technology became something else entirely. And then, silence. "Data capture complete," Marcus whispered, his hand shaking as he reviewed the initial results. The transmission had been more than a message. It was a probe, a test, a challenge hurled into the cosmic void. Alina's voice cut through the stunned silence. "Multiple global agencies are mobilizing. They're treating this as a coordinated attack." Aria knew better. This wasn't an attack. This was first contact. The quantum device continued to pulse, now dormant but alive with potential. Microscopic quantum entanglements danced within its core, a living memory of the transmission that had just reshaped human understanding. "We've done something impossible," Marcus said, a wild laugh escaping his lips. "We've just sent a message that says, 'We're here, and we're not what you expected.'" Global communication networks began to stabilize, but nothing would be the same. The transmission had left invisible marks, quantum signatures that would take years to fully understand. Scientific institutions worldwide would spend decades analyzing those 17 minutes. Aria studied the initial data readouts. The transmission wasn't just a message. It was a complex, multidimensional communication that operated on levels beyond traditional human understanding. Mathematical equations that were also living languages. Communication methods that could simultaneously destroy and create. "They're watching," Alina said quietly, her intelligence training giving her a perspective the others lacked. "Whatever received our message. They're calculating their response." The quantum device continued to pulse, a soft, almost imperceptible rhythm that suggested something was listening, waiting. Outside the bunker, the Atacama Desert stretched into infinity, a landscape of impossible silence that now held the most significant scientific breakthrough in human history. 17 minutes had changed everything. And humanity was just beginning to understand the true nature of the game they had just entered. The underground complex beneath the United Nations headquarters in Geneva was never meant to be discovered. 37 levels below the pristine marble floors and diplomatic corridors, Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved like a ghost, her tactical augmentations allowing her to bypass security systems that were considered unhackable. She wasn't just a deep-cover operative. She was humanity's most carefully guarded secret. The quantum encryption module tucked beneath her skin pulsed with a rhythm that was both biological and technological. Decades of covert research of deliberately placed agents across global scientific and military institutions had led to this moment. Elena's comlink chirped, a quantum-encrypted message from Area Chen. "We're running out of time." The message read, "They're watching, and they're not alone." The complex was a museum of impossible technologies, artifacts recovered from crash sites that defied human understanding, communication systems that operated on principles beyond current scientific comprehension, biological interfaces that blurred the line between machine and living organism. But something was wrong. The artifacts were changing. Subtle shifts in quantum signatures suggested active observation. Whatever humanity had contacted during their 17-minute transmission was now studying them with an intensity that bordered on predatory. A holographic display flickered to life. Multiple dimensional representations of the original signal began to take shape, not as a communication, but as a living system of information. Elena recognized the pattern immediately. This wasn't just a message. It was a test. Humanity was never meant to be a passive participant. A voice echoed through the complex. Dr. Kamil Novak's final transmission had been more than a warning. It was a key, a quantum-encrypted revelation that suggested humanity was being evaluated for something far more significant than first contact. Global intelligence agencies were hunting Area, Marcus, and the rest of the research team. But they didn't understand the true nature of the threat. Some factions wanted to suppress the discovery. Others wanted to control it. A select few were terrified of what the signal might represent. Elena accessed the most classified database in human history. The truth was more complex than anyone could imagine. Multiple civilizations had been watching Earth, not as conquerors, not as potential resources, but as a variable in a cosmic equation that defied traditional understanding. Humanity was an anomaly, a species that didn't follow expected evolutionary patterns, a civilization that could adapt, transform, and challenge fundamental assumptions about intelligence and potential. The artifacts around her began to resonate. Quantum signatures shifted. For a moment, the entire complex breathed with an alien intelligence. A holographic projection materialized, not of a traditional alien form, but of a complex, multidimensional mathematical construct. It was watching, calculating, evaluating. "You are not what we expected," the projection seemed to say, though no words were actually spoken. Elena understood now. The 17-minute transmission was more than a message. It was humanity's audition, a demonstration of potential that would determine their place in a cosmic ecosystem far more complex than anyone had imagined. Civilizations were being evaluated, and humanity had just submitted its application. The quantum module beneath her skin continued to pulse, a living testament to human potential, to the ability to transform, to adapt, to challenge fundamental assumptions about what was possible. Outside the complex, the world continued to spin. Governments struggled to understand the global communication disruption. Scientific institutions worked frantically to decode fragments of the transmission. But here, deep beneath Geneva, the true game was being played. Humanity's most carefully guarded secret was about to be revealed. And nothing would ever be the same again. The artifacts continued to shift, to breathe, to watch. Something was coming. The global transformation began almost imperceptibly. Scientific breakthroughs erupted simultaneously across continents. In a laboratory in Kyoto, a team of geneticists discovered a method to regenerate neural pathways that defied previous understanding of human biology. Moments later, theoretical physicists in Sao Paulo developed a computational model that suggested multiple dimensions could be manipulated through pure consciousness. Dr. Area Chen watched the cascading innovations from a secure monitoring station, her fingers tracing the quantum networks that seemed to pulse with an almost living intelligence. The 17-minute transmission was doing something extraordinary. It was awakening humanity's latent potential. "It's a catalyst," Marcus Rodriguez muttered, analyzing real-time data streams that flickered with impossible complexity. Not just a communication, a transformation protocol. Global conflicts began to dissolve, not through diplomatic negotiations, but through a fundamental shift in human perception. Military leaders found themselves unable to maintain aggressive postures. Economic barriers crumbled as collaborative solutions became intuitively obvious. The quantum signal was rewriting the fundamental operating system of human civilization. In Geneva, Elena Rodriguez monitored the global changes from the underground complex. The artifacts around her began to resonate with human innovation, responding to the collective burst of creativity and problem-solving that was sweeping the planet. A research team in Mumbai developed a communication interface that could translate emotional states across species barriers. Neurologists in Toronto mapped consciousness patterns that suggested human perception was far more fluid than previously understood. Quantum physicists in Moscow demonstrated a method of information transfer that existed outside traditional space-time constraints. "They're selecting us," Elena whispered into her quantum-encrypted comlink. Not as conquerors, not as subjects, but as potential participants. The signal was teaching, revealing, evaluating. Governments watched in stunned silence as traditional power structures became increasingly irrelevant. The most significant changes weren't happening in political chambers or military installations. They were happening in research laboratories, in moments of collaborative insight, in the spontaneous connections between human minds. Dr. Arya Chen understood the true nature of the test. Humanity was being evaluated not by its technological achievements, but by its capacity for collective problem-solving. The quantum signal responded most strongly to moments of genuine collaborative creativity. A breakthrough in renewable energy in Copenhagen synchronized perfectly with a materials science discovery in Beijing. A medical research team in Cape Town developed a treatment that could reverse cellular degradation, matching a theoretical model proposed by a lone researcher in Argentina. The world was becoming something else entirely. Marcus's monitoring systems captured the extraordinary data. The quantum signal was more than a communication method. It was a living system of evaluation, a cosmic test that measured humanity's potential through its most unexpected qualities: adaptability, collaborative creativity, emotional intelligence. "We're not just being observed," Marcus said, his voice a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "We're being prepared. Prepared for what remained the central mystery." The quantum artifacts in the UN complex began to shift, creating holographic displays that showed intricate connection patterns. Humanity's innovations were being mapped, analyzed, integrated into a complex multidimensional understanding that transcended traditional scientific boundaries. Global communication networks transformed. Information began to flow with a fluidity that suggested a new form of collective consciousness was emerging. Not a hive mind, but a collaborative intelligence that maintained individual uniqueness while allowing unprecedented levels of connection. Arya realized the true nature of the signal. It wasn't just a message or a test. It was an invitation. An invitation to something far beyond human current comprehension. The quantum networks continued to pulse, to breathe, to wait. Somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, something was watching, calculating, preparing. Humanity had been chosen, not as a conquest, not as a resource, but as a potential. The facility buried deep within the Atacama Desert was never meant to be discovered. Its walls pulsed with quantum energies that defy human understanding, a testament to technologies that existed at the razor's edge of scientific possibility. Dr. Arya Chen stood before a holographic interface that was more alive than machine. Quantum threads of information danced around her, responding to thoughts she hadn't even fully formed. Beside her, Marcus Rodriguez worked with the intensity that bordered on religious fervor, his fingers moving across interfaces that seemed to breathe with alien intelligence. "We're close," Marcus muttered, his eyes reflecting complex mathematical patterns that shifted and transformed with each passing second. The final layers of the cipher are revealing something beyond our current comprehension. The quantum signal had been transforming, evolving. What had begun as a mysterious communication was now a living system of information that was teaching, probing, evaluating humanity's potential. Military leaders, scientific institutions, and global governments watched in a mixture of terror and anticipation. Colonel Jack Hansen entered the facility, his tactical augmentations humming with a quantum resonance that marked him as something more than a traditional soldier. Years of classified research had transformed him into a living bridge between human potential and something entirely new. "Incoming quantum cascade," he announced, his voice cutting through the electric tension. "The signal is preparing for final integration." Arya understood now. This wasn't just a discovery. This was humanity's threshold moment. The holographic display erupted with impossible geometries, mathematical equations that were also living languages, communication methods that could simultaneously destroy and create entire civilizations. The final layers of the cosmic cipher were revealing technologies that would make current quantum mechanics look like primitive mathematics. "It's an invitation." Alina Kozlov's voice came through the quantum comlink. She was monitoring the global network from the UN's underground complex. But an invitation to what? The facility began to transform. Walls became translucent, revealing quantum threads that connected to something far beyond the physical space of the research station. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend, to breathe, to think. Marcus's greatest breakthrough was becoming clear. The signal was not just a message from another civilization. It was a gateway, a potential method of transcending current physical limitations. Humanity stood on the precipice of understanding technologies that would redefine the very concept of existence. Quantum processors that were also living biological systems began to activate. The research team found themselves connected to a network of information that existed beyond traditional space-time constraints. Memories, scientific insights, potential technological innovations began to flow with a fluidity that defied human understanding. "We're being prepared," Arya whispered, her mind expanding to comprehend possibilities that moments ago would have seemed impossible. Not conquered, not controlled. Elevated. Global communication networks transformed. Scientific institutions worldwide detected quantum resonances that suggested a fundamental shift in human potential. The 17-minute transmission was revealing itself as something far more profound, a cosmic invitation to something beyond current human comprehension. Colonel Hansen's tactical systems began to integrate with the quantum network. His augmentations transformed, revealing technologies that blurred the line between biological and technological systems. He was becoming something more than human, yet still fundamentally human. The final layers of the cipher began to reveal extraordinary possibilities. Methods of faster-than-light communication, technologies that could manipulate dimensional barriers, scientific understanding that suggested consciousness itself was a fundamental force of the universe. "They've been watching," Marcus said, his voice a mixture of terror and exhilaration, not as conquerors, not as researchers, but as potential collaborators. The Atacama Desert facility became a threshold, a point of transformation where humanity would either step forward into something extraordinary or be left behind. Military leaders watched in stunned silence. Scientific institutions struggled to comprehend the incoming data. Global communication networks pulsed with a living intelligence that suggested something profound was happening. Arya Chen understood the true nature of the moment. This was humanity's audition, its evaluation, its invitation to something far beyond current understanding. The quantum threads continued to pulse, to breathe, to wait. Somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, something was watching, calculating, preparing. Humanity had reached its threshold. The moment of translation arrived not with a thunderous revelation, but with a silence that seemed to breathe with infinite potential. Dr. Arya Chen's hands moved across the quantum interface, her consciousness expanding beyond the physical limitations of her body. The final segment of the cosmic cipher unfolded like a living mathematical equation, revealing layers of understanding that would redefine human existence. Around her, the research team, Marcus Rodriguez, Alina Kozlov, Colonel Jack Hansen, stood transformed. No longer simply scientists or soldiers, they had become something else entirely. Living bridges between humanity's past and its extraordinary future. The transmission completed, and everything changed. It was not a message of conquest, not an invitation to submission. It was a recognition, a profound acknowledgement of humanity's unique potential in the vast cosmic ecosystem. The quantum network that had been building, growing, teaching, suddenly crystallized. Decades of scientific research, moments of human creativity, the collective potential of millions of minds, all converged into a singular point of understanding. Humanity had not been chosen. Humanity had chosen itself. Global communication networks erupted in a symphony of understanding. Scientific institutions worldwide experienced simultaneous breakthroughs. Technologies that had seemed centuries away suddenly became not just possible, but inevitable. A researcher in Mumbai discovered a method of cellular regeneration that could effectively halt aging. Simultaneously, a team in Tokyo developed a quantum communication method that could transmit information across dimensional barriers. In Sao Paulo, theoretical physicists mapped consciousness patterns that suggested human perception was far more fluid than previously understood. These were not isolated incidents. They were a coordinated awakening. "We're being integrated," Marcus whispered, his consciousness expanding beyond traditional human perception. Not controlled. Invited. The Cosmic Cipher was more than a message. It was a gateway, a test that humanity had been preparing for across millennia of scientific and cultural evolution. Every moment of human creativity, every breakthrough, every instance of collaborative problem-solving had been building to this moment. Alina Kozlov's tactical analysis systems transformed. Her understanding expanded to comprehend communication methods that existed beyond traditional language. She saw the Cosmic Cipher for what it truly was, a living system of evaluation that had been watching, waiting, preparing humanity for something extraordinary. Colonel Hansen's augmentations became something more than technology. They were now living interfaces, quantum bridges that connected human potential with possibilities beyond current comprehension. The transformation was not violent, not sudden. It was a gentle unfolding, like a flower opening to the first light of dawn. Governments dissolved, not through conflict, but through a fundamental understanding that traditional power structures were now irrelevant. Global challenges, climate change, resource distribution, technological development, became solvable through unprecedented levels of collaborative intelligence. The quantum network continued to pulse, to breathe, to teach. Area Chen understood now. The 17-minute transmission was never just a message. It was an initiation, a test that humanity had been unconsciously preparing for throughout its entire evolutionary journey. "We're not alone," Marcus said, his voice a combination of scientific precision and profound wonder. And we never were. The Cosmic Cipher revealed civilizations that existed in forms humanity had never imagined. Communication methods that transformed consciousness into pure information. Technologies that manipulated dimensional barriers as casually as humans once manipulated electrical switches. And humanity had been invited to participate. Not as a conquered species, not as a resource to be exploited, but as potential collaborators in a cosmic ecosystem of intelligence that defied previous understanding. The Atacama Desert Facility became a threshold, a point of transformation where humanity stepped forward into something extraordinary. Global networks pulsed with a living intelligence. Scientific institutions detected quantum resonances that suggested a fundamental shift in human potential. The boundaries between biological and technological, between individual and collective, began to dissolve. Somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, something was watching. Not with hostility, not with fear, but with recognition. Humanity had passed the test, and the universe was waiting.